As usual, this is the GUAC maintenance meeting. Happens every Monday. This meeting is being recorded. It will be uploaded to somewhere that will be publicly available. Um, um, Participation in the meeting is in accordance with LF antitrust policies as well as the LF and OpenSSF antitrust policies and code of conduct. All right, let's get started. I think we have a couple topics today. The first one is an update or discussion of the justified donation. Dejan, you wanna?
Yeah, so good news is that finally I think agreement is being signed as far as I know. So the folks from Red Hat and LF are talking, and we gave them all the resources that we are going to donate. So I expect that to be completed soon. So then the question is now what? uh, any ideas about first thing we want to do? How we gonna present it on the website? Do we wanna blog something? Do we?
Let me. I feel like we wrote something down about this last time, so let me let me try and bring it. Let me try and bring it up. Uh, let me. I just realized I can't share this.
I mean, we can move this later in the meeting if you wanna do other topics and then find out this in the meantime. Whatever.
I think that's fine. So this was the doc that I kind of just bring it back because I think there's some items that we can reuse from here. I can't share my screen, but if I go down to the so-called proposed GUAC community next steps document, I think there's a couple things that we can check out from here, right? I think there's some like logistical things we need to do, such as like update the governance, kind of make that clear. Um, do the code moving and things like that. But I think on top of that, yeah, governance structure. I think we want to figure out what the meanings will look like going forward, right? So I think those are the two main steps that will be concurrent with just like getting repos transferred, making sure everything builds and stuff like that. And then I think once that's done, then we can do the big like write a blog post. Uh, yeah, but I think it sounds like based on the list, and thanks whoever helped check the boxes. The next one is governance structure. I think we kind of have something agreed on, but I think let's codify it and write it down, put it in the repo. And I think that should be the next steps. At the same time, I think we can start thinking about the messaging of like what do we want to do with this meeting. We want to kind of like rename it, or we want to expand. We want to expand the scope. We want to also include that in the communications that we're sending out, right? So that we now open this meeting for folks that want to talk about the space in general, or even if they have like specific things about Trustify, this is the call that they should come to. Ben.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should have those kinds of details ironed out before we do, the blog posts, and we'll definitely want to redo a lot of especially the docs site. We'll need some rearranging. I think we were probably due for that anyway. I do think we should probably try and have the web docs and blog stuff wrapped up before open source or open SSF community day in Amsterdam, because I hear there are two people who are going to be giving a talk about this. And it'd be good to have, that kind excuse me, that kind of stuff done so that if people decide to go look afterwards, that, they see the actual state or the state that we want things to be in, not, sort of a work in progress.
And that's in August, right? Last week of August.
Yeah, it's like the 25th or something about that. So
28 or something. Yeah.
Before I'm just gonna put like 20th of August. Okay. I updated the doc so that at least we have that. I added the one on redoing the blog and doc site to reflect the new information. And open SSF blog posts. Okay. So next step is governance and the meeting structure. I think I'd be happy to take one of these. I don't know whether someone else wants to take the other one.
I can help with any.
Sorry?
Sorry, what? Sorry, Dejan, you asked something?
I said I'm happy to help with any of the tasks. Yeah.
Okay. I think it'll be helpful. Maybe if you can draft out maybe what the community event looks like. I feel like that would be useful. And there's a bunch of, I think we've written a bunch of stuff from the notes that we discussed within the doc as well, so you can reuse some of that. Yeah. And then I will take an action item on the governance bit.
Didn't we have some Google Doc with some governance ideas? I think.
Yeah, I think it's this one. It should be. Wait a minute. I don't know. Are you seeing? I can't share because hardware weirdness. Let me see. Yeah, we do have something.
Can you post the list on the
proposed
Slack?
structure.
Sorry, or on the chat. It's also okay.
I put it in the meeting notes.
That's even
I
better.
don't know whether someone can grab that. Unfortunately, I tried to join on my laptop to the same meeting and feedback happens even though I'm muted, so I don't want to try that again. Yeah. I think my to-do will be just to create a PR. To encode all these things. Yeah. So I don't know whether this is section. It's like the number 4, proposed structure and integration. Yeah, so I'll create a PR for the governance.
Cool. And I'll try to do some thinking about
I think
events. Huh?
Yeah. I think this will almost kind of be like the blurb for like what the meetings are and kind of like the blurb that we will send out for for the as part of the blog post or the email announcement. Yeah, yeah, like which are Slack channels, mailing lists, community meetings, weekly meetings, and so on, and like what topics they will cover. I know last time we did the blog post, it took about 2 weeks to get it shipped out. So I'm putting a date here for August 1st for it's our deadline to start reaching out to OpenSSF. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah. I think then once we have those two things, then we can start redoing the doc side and things like that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sounds good. Maybe let's go to Ben's topic first, because I feel like that should be seems straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, so I dropped this link into Slack last week, but I saw on LinkedIn that GitHub is going to be launching a preview for what they're calling immutable releases. Basically, the idea is, once you use a tag, you can't reuse it. As we know, Git tags are inherently mutable, and that is a vector for supply chain attacks. I don't think there's any official documentation that's publicly available yet. The person who posted this made it sound like that would launch sometime this month as a preview. So I was just curious if that was something that we wanted to try and participate in, or if we want to just wait until it becomes, public, generally available, and then decide if we want to opt into that or not. And I'll say I don't really have strong feelings about it either way, but
I don't know how much
figured
work
I'd
it would
get-
take. I don't know if it's just a checkbox or because I know it's tied to like they're talking about tying it to attestations and other sorts of things. Like, are we going to need to update our workflows to, to get any benefit out of it, or really just, that might be some interesting things to ask about. I know our workflows and build are quite, in my opinion, quite complicated with like the makefile and the buildx and the Go releaser that runs buildx and things like that to get all of our containers built. So, I don't have anything against it, but again, I don't know if we have the right expertise to utilize it available to contribute updates to that stuff if we need it.
I was just wondering, is an okay outcome to request access to it and then not use it, just to see what it is? Like scratch the itch of curiosity, but not necessarily lose our sleep if we don't end up enabling it.
I mean, I don't think they'll take our account away for if we do that. And if we request access, we poke around and we find it's not useful to us or it's complicated, I think that's good feedback we could provide to them. So as a next step, I can reach out to the person who posted that and just try and get a little more detail. And the answer may be, well, just wait till we announce the public preview here in a week or two. but you can kind of get a sense of, if it is going to be more complicated, maybe we just wait till it's GA and you can sit down and, figure out what kind of impact it has. If it is, basically check this box and all the magic happens behind the scenes, then I think that, seems worthwhile to try out.
So I actually met in person Christine and Frederick from GitHub last year at the OpenSSF Day here in Vienna. So if if you want to include me into that as well in a chat with them, go ahead. Maybe you can make it more personal, so to say.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I think my take on it is like it seems cool. I think likewise, my only kind of consideration is whether it's like an add-on thing or it will kind of change our workflows and may potentially break things. Yeah, and whether it's undoable if that happens.
Just for the sake of the recording, Santiago asked if said we would need a release for this, or if we could do it retroactively. And I've been planning for a little while to do a GUAC visualizer release. There were a couple minor things that got fixed and some dependency updates. So I thought it'd be good just to do a tidy on that. So if it is sort of a simple checkbox or, very simple activity, we could enable it on GUAC visualizer first as a test case, do that release, and then, see what we want to do with GUAC proper and, the Trustify stuff that will be coming under that umbrella too.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion on the doing it for the visualizer. Awesome. Cool. Santiago, do you wanna chat a bit about what's going
Sure.
on?
So lately we have focused on two things really. One of them is I don't know if you recall last time we spoke about the identifier. One of the problems we had was uh, there is were there any identifiers that we could use to really test this design and actually see if the refinement process was useful, if we know that this happened in the wild, but we didn't have a lot of data as to how often does it happen and what are the types of like identifier issues that we run into in the wild. So we have been collecting data from different sources like Docker Hub, Maven Central, a bunch of other like SBOMs from different ecosystems, and we effectively tried to run them through our identifier parsing pipeline to see if we were able to actually find discrepancies between two identifiers that are the same or one identifier that's really talking about two different things, like a type 1, type 2 errors. And we found a couple, ironically enough, on Red Hat Pearls that, as far as I can understand, the Red Hat tools makes pearls in one way, and a bunch of tools that are not Red Hats make the pearls in another, like slightly nuanced way. I think they, for example, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but I think Red Hat does include the distro, as in like we are Red Hat or Fedora or whatever, and the tools out there, they just kind of like forget about it, and then they said every package is Red Hat. I think there was also a channel variable that Red Hat included, like a rel 6, rel 7, or whatever, that nobody else is using. So I think that this is a useful sort of like use case that we can say, hey, look, we need a better sort of like parsing pipeline. I would like to encode some of these results and share them with everybody once we have like concrete numbers and sort of like a methodology. I think something that would be nice is to to bring some recommendations for tool makers, as in push and pull as well. The other thing that we've been working on, and this is mostly on early sketches so far, is we wanted to bring in the software ID core tool to start doing the decomposition into WAC ID, and probably start carving out either a fork of WAC or like I'm trying to figure out what is the MVP that we can use to really test this new architecture for software identifiers. And pulling in like the whole of WAC feels like daunting, but it could also be just like a first sort of like sketch that we can share and eventually have people tell us this is not the right architecture, or why don't you re-implement it in this module. You may have seen a couple of students of mine drop by on WAC and software ID core just throwing in pull requests. I think I had a conversation with them on Friday. I think they need to also do a better job at communicating exactly what they're trying to do, and probably documenting their thought process a little bit better and being a little bit mindful that these are in some places like actually tools that people are relying on. So you can just kind of like throw in the first thing that comes to mind. But hopefully that'll allow us to soon have a sketch that we can show. I'm thinking that with a Red Hat use case, plus a sort of like a WAC subset, we can start showing how we can use this to disambiguate. Another thing that I think we realized recently that I think it's exciting is, in reality, the disambiguation mechanism can be anything from the simple algorithm that I had described, as sort of like the counting labels, to something a little bit more advanced that uses embeddings, or there's a thing called entity resolution. Apparently, that's like a very sort of like heavyweight, but it can actually find undiscovered relationships between not software identifiers, between elements on a graph, right? So hopefully we can also try a couple of strategies and maybe even offer them to users, or just have people deploy their own by writing their own sort of like module that feeds in and feeds out like disambiguations. That's the sort of a quick and dirty of where we're at.
Yeah, I'd be kind of curious. Like, I think there's probably ways in which they can do the processing without reinventing too much of the wheel, because I think the GUAC can be used like piecewise. So yeah, I encourage them to come by, and then I'm kind of curious also, and then see whether we can write something out for them, and then have it also be in line with like the new ontology work that we've been discussing.
Yeah, is there any conference next week? Like now, is Amsterdam next week? No, right? Okay.
That's all.
It's August. Okay. I'm losing track of that. So I'm going to ask my both, probably two students to drop by and show one of the like data collection bits and the oddities, and probably have Abby talk a little bit about the work he's been doing to try to map out the how to integrate. Realistically, I think he's right now just trying to help with like picking up issues in whatever regard he can to get familiarized with the code base. But I think he has a couple of sketches that he can probably talk about. Maybe it's not too early to share. Maybe be present in this meeting moving forward. It's also probably a good idea.
So yeah, I've been taking a look at the GUAC code to try to figure out what else is supposed to go into software ID core. Let me just share my screen real quick. Yeah, so I was doing a little bit of like, oh, my browser's not responding. Oh
We
yeah,
can
here it is.
see something.
Yeah, can you see I was doing some searching for Perl, and trying to find the stuff that I think is supposed to be moved over. Like I was looking at the ingester parser common. I didn't some of this stuff maybe, but and then the other one that looks really interesting is up here on assembler. Sorry, assembler helpers. Where's helpers?
Is it
Here.
assembler? Oh, there.
Yeah, so it's a bunch of like conversion and identifier stuff. But so the thing is it's kind of like what you were mentioning is a lot of it is between GUAC, like package specs or GUAC ontology and Perls or vice versa. And then it's also got all the generic Perl stuff, the source, like the VCS to GUAC source, all that stuff. So I think all this is really interesting and useful for, independent research and tooling. But this does this so the kicker is everything here depends on our generated code models and spec from our GraphQL. So honestly, like it almost seems like the best thing out of GUAC 1.0 or ontology is something that maybe should be um, pulled out and made, like in a lot of big projects, like where there's protobuf, there'll be an API repo where you'll check in the proto and it'll generate the generated code and that's it. And then everything else includes that. So that would be a kind of a lot of manual labor for the for GUAC, maybe not a lot to create a whole new API repo, but that could be an option. I mean, the other option is we could just pull this stuff out into Software ID Core, and then Software ID Core would depend on GUAC, which is a lot of dependencies that aren't needed, but at least the code that like you're looking at is contained in one repo that doesn't have a bunch of other stuff that is running GUAC. So I think that either of those are options.
I think those two options are good. I kind of like the API repo one. Feels a little bit mechanical and probably
Yeah.
like hard to get wrong
I,
if you know what you're doing, right?
I'm kind of wondering how does it work with like I wonder when this is a simple way to, because I know you can now do like Go mod files, like Go modules, like sub Go modules or something like that.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah, have
that?
a Go mod in the generated code for that code only, and then only that gets pulled in. That's an idea too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I could have them try it out.
Yeah.
I've never done sub Go modules. I think and I guess
I think it should be the same. It should be the same as treating it as its own
Right.
on repo, yeah. And then at least we don't have to do the moving. We can still manage it there.
Right. Okay. Another sort of like low impact thing that we're gonna do is since we want to add the WAC ID transformation into Software ID Core, we did a little bit of digging of who's using Software ID Core. There seems to be like an SBOM clearly defined tool that I assume it's like the only thing that we wouldn't want to break that use case for. So we're trying to architect a way to like effectively in Software ID Core right now there's a like Perl to clearly define coordinates. We'll leave that function there. We strip the code out and we replace it with like Perl to WAC ID and then WAC ID to clearly defined. And that's like a first like zero impact. The functionality is fundamentally the same, but we start building the WAC ID structures inside so that we can add more functions of this style as we start supporting more identifier ecosystems. The state keeping is something that I'm not entirely sure how to deal with just yet because we're doing, I mean, most of the state keeping right now is on databases, but I guess we could use like an in-mem storage backend. I guess that's a question that I would have to bring up. Maybe not now, but it's if we're doing refinement, that means that we need to do state keeping. If we're doing state keeping, we need either a database or something of the sorts. But all of the database code is inside of WAC. So what gives?
Sorry, go ahead.
No. You go ahead.
Yeah, I think doesn't necessarily like at least like the architecture that we want to move towards is like you get predicates and then you manage those predicates separately, right? And then that goes also with the Trustify model as well. So I think ideally it's like we would spit out a proto and kind of like what Jeff said, right? Just like here's a output format, and then you can kind of like use that and start that and query that and index the fields that you want to.
Right. Okay, so in a sense we could support like a in-mem storage for this, and then if you wanted to do some like more sophisticated state keeping and reasoning through it, well, that's for okay.
I mean, all the database code is about serving the GraphQL API, right? But if all we care about are the GraphQL models, then you don't need that, right? You just do the conversions and you have all the models in memory.
I may be inclined to just say like I think it would be helpful for us also if someone just took since our GraphQL is now 1.0, like so if someone took those models and just made protos, I think that that could be a useful thing to have. So yeah, and then that will give us like a starting point for the 2.0 as well, because if not, like, I don't think many people like reading GraphQL. So I'm not familiar with it. Yeah, that would be very helpful if I think that will also simplify the interface, right? So we just pipe out a bunch of protos, and then you have just like something that reads protos, and technically you can have a database that supports proto-based schemas, right? So you just store them as files. You can read them in its protos and so on.
Yeah,
As I found
think
out,
that's
use Apache Beam and like do cool stuff with it.
yeah, I think that this is where we're at as well. We're trying to build like scaffolding so that we can more. So all of these proposals are really useful for us to have something to build upon and show more concrete stuff.
It is super cool. I'm looking forward to having them come here and chat with us and get some concrete features out. Cool. I think that's all we have for the agenda.